Welcome back to the 236th episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through some of the top stories, including Donald Trump saying that we need to actually not ban TikTok, a little bit of a flip-flop from his previous position, Andrew Cuomo calling out the governor of New York and the federal administration for the immigrant crisis that's happening in New York, as well as a article explaining the stock surges over the course of the year, how it actually may be productivity growth that keeps them going even with interest rates hike. And, of course, we will end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. Now, that's enough rambling from me. Let's jump in to our daily debate. So, for those of you who have been here for a while, you'll know that I've had a pretty strong stance on TikTok before, and I have reevaluated. At least I have thought it over a little bit more. And when I was first advocating that we should ban it, it was for more personal reasons. I didn't like seeing some of my friends and other people I know waste time on it. And now I've come to the realization that we should try to get rid of TikTok, but it shouldn't be through the government. It should be through social stigma, pressure, so on and so forth, and trying to get people to better themselves rather than the government forcing them to do so. But this article provides some interesting wrinkles to the story, and one little theory popped in my head, which may be very, very interesting going into this next year or the next few years, and we'll see how it pans out. So, let's jump to this first article. If you have any comments, throw it down there in the comment section. This one comes from Business Insider. Trump says banning TikTok would make Facebook, an enemy of the people, stronger. I mean, that's some pretty strong language right there. Enemy of the people. I'll tell you now, I think a lot of the middle-aged moms, I think a lot of the young teens, I think a lot of the soccer dads, anybody who uses Facebook would definitely disagree with the idea that it is the enemy of the people. But then again, him and Trump and Facebook have not had the most friendly relationship. They banned him there for a little bit, at least restricted his access. So, of course, he's going to be frustrated. And, of course, he's going to say they're the enemy of the people when he has his own social media outlet that he's trying to promote, a.k.a. Truth Social. But let's jump into one of the first quotes here. Quote, Donald Trump is doubling down on his new pro-TikTok stance, saying Facebook is the true enemy. Trump told CNBC's Squawk Box on Monday morning, there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad with TikTok. But the thing I don't like is that without TikTok, you can make Facebook bigger, and I consider Facebook to be an enemy of the people. Well, if we're going to look at it purely from a national security standpoint, the Chinese-controlled TikTok, the Chinese-controlled ByteDance, which is the mother company of TikTok, I would say they're more the enemy of the people just because of where that data that the users are generating when they're on the platform goes, what it can tell the Chinese government about our people, their weaknesses, what they will spend hours upon hours scrolling through, so on and so forth. But Facebook, while you may not love them and you may think that they are not doing great things either, trying to exploit people's attention spans and their dopamine firings and things of that nature, at least that information can stay in country, and in theory, at least the U.S. government could regulate them because they are a U.S. company. But then we kind of run into the exact same area where it's a state-controlled or at least a state-limited social media platform, just like the one in TikTok. It's a little different because every single company has to work with the Chinese Communist Party within China. It's not like we would be demanding that here in the United States, but we would essentially be rolling down the exact same path if we were to start doing some sort of heavy restriction that is greatly monitored by the U.S. Imagine the U.S. says, hey, this sort of content is not okay. We don't want to see it on the platform. It's hurting the youths, so to speak. And they directly get involved with content moderation at Facebook. You could see where that actually leads. So that leads some of the skeptical people, the people who say, hey, we may not like TikTok, but at the end of the day, we don't want to set a precedent that it's okay to restrict something in order to actually protect the social good, so to speak. And I'm putting air quotes around that. And then that could lead to them getting more involved with the social media platforms here, or even shutting them down if they don't prop up certain narratives that the government in power likes, whether that's Republican or Democrat or third party independent in the future, or they may actually not want to do some things like that, but they see the opportunity to exert their control. They may say, well, hey, on principle, we don't want to limit people's liberty, but we also know that Facebook can have a big effect on the election, so we need to ban certain types of content that could get out there before the election and sway people's votes. That would be a more cynical, direct use of their power. So if you're setting this precedent now, where you can make national security arguments, you can make social good arguments in order to limit people's freedoms to interact and use these platforms as they like, it can go forward and be a precedent that's used again. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, okay, this precedent is set, they will use it again, but the question is, will they? And the question is, do you think that they will? Because guess what? When a precedent is normally broken or set, just like when it came to blocking judges, just like it came to last-minute appointment with judges with Mitch McConnell, getting rid of the filibuster in the Senate, one side does it to boost their political advantage, and then the other side takes advantage of it when they are in power. So you can see where my little bit of cynicalness comes into this equation. And I think the Business Insider does a pretty good job of also breaking down some other factors here and highlighting how Trump is kind of flip-flopped on this one. Quote, while President Trump pushed for a TikTok ban unless it's sold to new U.S. owners, but ultimately backed off. Quote, frankly, there are a lot of people on TikTok that love it, he said in Monday's interview. There are a lot of young kids on TikTok who will go crazy without it. There are a lot of users. Also, it's kind of sad that he makes that statement, and I kind of read it like, yeah, actually, I agree. There are plenty of kids who will go crazy without it. Yeah, it's kind of embedded into the culture. It's embedded into some people's lives, and that is most definitely sad. Then again, you're talking to somebody that does enjoy a good amount of YouTube, except when I cut it out there for quite some time, but I have fallen into old habits, and I do enjoy some YouTube videos before I go to bed and so on and so forth, or in the background sometimes. So I'm sure that if they said, hey, let's ban YouTube, I would also be pretty darn frustrated, but it would probably be for the betterment of me, at least to restrict my YouTube access a little bit more. And maybe if there's a social campaign to say, hey guys, spend a little bit more time in the real world. It's almost as if there was a saying, oh, touch grass. Maybe we need to send that out to the TikTok people and the YouTube kids and all of us that have a little bit too much time invested in some of these apps, and we need to get out there in the real world. So that's all on Trump's side. Here's what Congress is doing currently in order to actually ban TikTok. Quote, Congress is weighing a proposed bipartisan bill that would ban the app. In the U.S., if its Chinese owner ByteDance doesn't sell its U.S. operations to a non-Chinese company. The bill supporters worry that the Chinese government could force ByteDance to turn over its data on Americans. Some have speculated that Trump's flip-flop could be related to his meeting with billionaire Jeff Yazd, who's both a prominent Republican donor and a major TikTok investor, which is very interesting perspective. That's very cynical of Business Insider, or at least the people that are saying that could be the possibility, and then Business Insider is actually, quote-unquote, printing that. I think it's also interesting that he had a meeting with Elon Musk. And I'm going to warn you, we're going into not conspiracy theory territory, but we're going into wild theory territory. Trump also had a meeting with Elon Musk. Maybe it was before or after Yazd, but the point being, he's running in these circles. He's talking to big money ballers. And guess what platform has not adapted short-form content exactly the same way as the others? So you have Instagram Reels. I'm pretty sure Facebook has a version of Shorts or something like that. YouTube also has Shorts. So all of these companies have adapted. They've taken on the TikTok mode of providing different types of content to their users. And Twitter necessarily, they've done a little bit, but they haven't done it to the same degree. And Facebook and Instagram, two very large social media companies. They are owned by, Meta overall. YouTube is pretty large. Then you have Snapchat, you have TikTok, you have Twitter/X. So then, would it really be that much of a concentration of the market if Twitter and TikTok were to be in the same company, or at least owned by the same person? You see where I'm getting at here? Maybe in order to solve everybody's issues, one, Trump wants to get it away from the Chinese government, but he also wants to keep it going. He asks Elon Musk to purchase it. Elon Musk says, hey, this is another way, another company that can generate revenue more than Twitter can. It also allows us to take it out of the hands of the Chinese government. And the Chinese government may be saying, they're like, okay, so hey, we may have to sell this off, but we can still give it to somebody that we have a little bit of leverage over, because he just made another Tesla factory in China, and he is very dependent on our market in order to grow the EV sector across the world. And since we're one of the largest battery producers, he's at least going to have to take us seriously. Maybe the stars are aligning here. I don't know if Musk would take out another huge loan in order to do it. Then again, it's not like he's buying something that's unprofitable. He's actually buying something that's profitable. I don't think the U.S. government, I don't think people on the left, I don't think antitrust would like it whatsoever. But then again, he also got away with buying Twitter after people didn't like it at a meme price. So we'll see. It's just one of those wild theories that popped into my head that seems to placate a lot of the different actors in this one. And then also, there are already backers for TikTok who are already American-based, and if they're okay with hopping in with Elon, then he probably wouldn't have to fund too much. Maybe they make a separate holding company in order to purchase it, so that now that it is under the U.S. idea. And even Elon Musk may be more okay with taking on the risk, because now that he's building out his AI infrastructure and his AI generative AI system at X. Imagine the extra data that you can get from TikTok. Imagine the different algorithm information you can get about users, which allows you to more directly target them with ads on X and on TikTok, and in general, in the everything app that he wants to use in the future. I'm just saying, it's a little bit crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's other speculation about it. It just kind of popped into my head. Maybe I'm a whack nut overall. But if I was Elon Musk's friend, I would at least be asking him, like, hey, are you considering it? So that's enough on that one. Let's jump to our second article that comes from National Review. Andrew Cuomo calls NYC migrant crisis worst government blunder he's ever seen. Well, that doesn't surprise me when he kind of got kicked out of the party that he's coming after the party that kicked him out. But it's definitely an interesting one here. He was actually at a church service when he was giving this speech. So let's jump to one of the first quotes from this article, and then we can delve into it a little bit more. Quote, Cuomo, who left office in 2021 due to a sexual harassment scandal, blamed New York City's migrant problem on the Biden administration, which has caused an explosion of illegal immigration with a record 2.3 billion, million migrants arriving at the southern border in fiscal year 2023, more than 100,000 of whom have made their way to New York City to take advantage of the free housing and benefits it offers, which is definitely something where a former governor of the state could say that he understands a little bit of the mechanisms at work here. Whether or not you like Andrew Cuomo, whether or not you think it was fair to have him trounced out of the party like he was the governor. So he has some understanding of how it works. He has some understanding of the tools that would be at his disposal. And he's obviously sitting there like, hey, now this is not all Hochul's fault. There's just some things that the government can't actually solve on a local level when they are being bussed in by the federal government, or the federal government has a terrible border policy that allows more people to come across. And when at the end of the day, he may not love his local Democratic Party, but he still has to take the gun and aim it at the federal administration, that there's something more than just political, what's the word I'm looking for here? More than just political calculations at hand. He is trying to maybe rebuild his reputation. I think that could be a possibility, but I think genuinely he does see this as a crisis, just like Hochul herself has said that there's issues with it here. We've seen strategic pivots from Hochul herself, especially on crime and bringing in the National Guard. So maybe this crisis is actually waking up New Yorkers, even the Democratic New Yorkers, and maybe it will be the political reawakening of a Cuomo brother. Who knows? I don't know for sure, but he has more to say about the border before I keep speculating about him actually running for Senate or something like that again. Quote, "This is the worst government blunder I have seen in my entire life," he told congregants at Union Grove Ministry Baptist Church in the Bronx. You have a federal government, which is where it starts. It's standing at the border with a sign that says, "Come to the United States of America and claim asylum," and 2 million people come. Of course, from Venezuela, Honduras, Guatemala. They get to the border and then they say, "Hey, where do you want to go?" And they say, "I want to go to New York." What do you think they're saying? "I want to go to Nevada?" Well, I mean, that's fair enough. Yeah, New York. Actually, that's fair enough. Interesting. New York has a lot of economic opportunities, sure. And I mean, there's a big idealized dream that people have of going to New York and living there and going to the Big Apple and experiencing all the culture. But I'll be honest, the weather ain't the best in New York most of the year. You have maybe a few months out of the year that are really stellar, and besides that, overly cold, windy. You get some pretty crazy snowstorms sometimes, possible hurricanes because you're right there on the water. So, I mean, like, is New York all it's chalked up to be? Maybe the center of human innovation on the continent, and definitely it captures the imagination of the entire world. But it's so interesting to me. Why not go like California? Why not go LA? At least they have nice weather year round, which means you can get nice jobs year round. You're not going to be stuck inside for part of the year. Then again, like I said, when you have a place like New York that has certain benefits in place, like giving out credit cards, the new migrants are probably saying, "Hey, whoa, sorry, not credit cards, prepaid debit cards. There's a debit card program. I mean, that sounds better than not getting any money, but the weather, okay, we're just going to work past it. We're just going to put in our hours, and we're going to find a good job in New York, and we're going to make our money and send some things back to my family. I'm going to work hard." That's the mentality. And if you're looking for economic opportunities in a city of multiple millions and lots of different jobs there, that does make sense to some degree. I don't know, just as a person, if I wouldn't be picky if I was genuinely running away from a government that wanted to get rid of me, or there was some sort of threat to me. So if I'm coming from another country, I'm not going to be picky if that's the case about where I'm going to end up. I'm going to be happy that I end up somewhere and I can make money. But at the end of the day, if I'm just coming here because the economic opportunities are better, I might be a little bit pickier, but that's just my opinion. So there's one other part of this that I wanted to read you that also includes some comments from the current mayor of the city of New York. Quote, "Mayor Eric Adams has since called for the federal government to provide resources to the city, but it has not received outside help from Washington, D.C. in January. The incumbent governor announced the state would allocate over $2 billion to help manage New York City's migrant crisis. Similar to Cuomo, Adams, who also recently blamed the Biden administration handling of an illegal immigration and called for a national solution to fix the problem." And this is one of the other reasons that I really wanted to bring up this article, because you are causing some of the major people, whether you like Cuomo or not, he is a major figure. He may have had a fall from grace, but once again, people still know his name. They still recognize his face. He was their governor for a good amount of time. Guess what? You are causing some of these prominent figures in these states, if you are Mr. Joe Biden, to turn against you. This does not look good. Now, are people going to not vote for you just because Eric Adams and Mr. Cuomo come out and say, this is outrageous, Mr. Biden needs to fix this? Probably not. I don't think they're sitting at the statue worshiping either of these guys saying, yes, of course, you don't like Biden, then yes, I won't vote Biden. But this is a serious problem when you even have people in Chicago coming out and saying, hey, the federal government needs to step up and do something more here. Biden is losing, or at least is having his, I don't want to say, how should I say it very nicely? He is having his head bonked across from multiple cities saying, hey, whoa, fix this. Come on. I need you to do something. And even though these cities aren't at the point where they are going to fully, say, hey, Biden, we're not supporting you. We're going to outright blast you going into an election year. If it reaches a really terrible breaking point, and the citizens also agree that it's reaching a breaking point, and it actually shifts the demographics of what the voter turnout will be, or at least how the voters will turn out in the next election, he may be getting some more harsh comments and criticisms from these sort of elected officials in these states. And at the end of the day, that doesn't look good for him. It doesn't look good when some of your largest cities are criticizing you openly on one of your worst issues, which is immigration, especially nowadays. That's why it was buried at the end of the State of the Union. That's why he's trying to turn this bill, the bill that they try to get passed, into a political winner for him. He's trying to say that the Republicans tanked it. And that's all because it's political gamemanship in order to turn, like I said, his worst issue into at least, if not a winner, then at least not impotent, but basically make it ineffective as an issue. And when you have people from your, I don't want to say your constituency, but New York a lot of the times goes blue. When you have places like New York that are supposed to be with you until the end, criticizing you and calling you out, it's the best place for it to happen because they're probably going to support you anyway. But at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily look good. So, with all that said, let's jump to our final article that comes from the Wall Street Journal. The shift that explains lofty markets, the economy got more productive. And when I was reading that, I was thinking, okay, it got more productive. What's one of the reasons that it may have gotten more productive? Oh, yeah, there's this thing called an AI boom. And whether or not everybody actually is getting more productive, the perception, hey, okay, they're using AI, which means they can either cut some hours or they can completely fire people. And I know that you may be thinking, wait, hold on, that's a good thing. But in the world of the Wall Street Journal, if you could do the same job with less people and therefore less billed hours, then you can make more profit. So yes, unfortunately, firing people and getting rid of certain departments because they're no longer needed, even though you're putting those people out on the streets, in Wall Street's eyes, it's like, oh, more money to be made. Okay. And then this idea that AI is proliferating everything in all of these companies, that more companies are using generative AI in some of their processes. Yeah, it sends a signal, whether or not they actually do it, whether or not they're just using the buzzwords, like the argument goes from some people who have been watching the market and looking at this tech bubble. There are certain productivity gains from artificial intelligence. I'll tell you on the creative side, and this is small scale. So, and also, I don't technically run a business, and I technically am one person who it doesn't affect that much. But for the generation of the thumbnails, and let's be clear, all of them are not stellar, but doing it the way I do it with a generative AI art app rather than having to sit in Illustrator or sit in Photoshop or sit in any Adobe program or even Canva, the amount of time that I save by doing it that way, because I can just walk away from the computer, can generate some images, I can throw them into a thumbnail, so on and so forth. The amount of time that I save is pretty staggering, especially because in Illustrator, I suck. And let's be clear, I can refine my skills. I can use Illustrator okay. Some of my elements for the videos are from Illustrator, and it took me maybe, an hour to get them done or a little bit longer perfecting them after the initial hour. But imagine I was making new thumbnail elements every single time for an hour. that's a lot of time that I could be doing something else. And AI has actually cut down on those sort of things, along with different filtering. We don't have to go into all of that on my end, but my point being, if AI is used in certain situations, it can very well actually make things faster. Imagine you have a standard contract. You're a lawyer, and you have a standard contract that you give to absolutely everybody that is going to use your services. And you want to repeat that. You want to make a new one. It's similar, but every single time it has to be a little bit customized. So you say, hey, ChatGPT, we're going to put in some blanks. I need you to put in this person's names here, here, and here, and just fill it out for me. We don't have to waste a intern's time going through and putting in the separate name here or any separate clauses, so on and so forth. I don't think we're quite there to make that 100% effective. It would probably still mess up. But my point being, there are plenty of examples that can cut down on those sort of hours. Now, does that actually mean that the idea of AI, what I just talked about, were all great ideas of it working out perfectly? Does that mean that it's actually integrated perfectly and they're causing a lot of companies to have these productivity boosts that would justify these large stock prices? Probably not. And the interesting thing that the Wall Street Journal is trying to point out here is this productivity, or at least this idea that productivity is rising, has caused a really weird thing, which is usually when bond yields and the treasury yields go up, then we start to see the stock prices and more defensive stocks, more like, okay, hey, we're going to leave our money here in order to stave off any problems that would be coming in the market, because investors get hesitant. They're like, oh, okay, so people are going to start shifting their money into these bonds, into the treasury yields, into the what they used to be called Liberty bonds, but the treasury bonds, and they take their money out of stocks. But it hasn't actually worked that way. Quote, at an economic level, the investor belief is that there is more capacity for growth than expected, so more growth, and thus profit, can be made before the economy overheats and leads to inflation. In the long term, many investors hope that gains from new technologies, particularly AI, will lead to a sustained productivity booms akin to that of the 1960s or the late 1990s. Higher productivity means higher interest rates than otherwise, but for the stock market, that should offset the higher profits that growth brings. Also, what happened during I can't think about the 1960s. I'll be honest, I don't remember if there was a crash then. But what happened at the end of the 1990s going into 2000? Yes, remind me. It is, Amazon came out of it, so it's great, but at the same time, there was a bit of a bubble that got burst, the dot-com bubble. Are we heading into the AI bubble? Maybe just a little bit. I'm not skeptical whatsoever. What do you mean? Let's be clear. I do think a lot of them are artificially increased for sure. I think that some companies can actually exploit AI, but just like there's a .com, there was a .com for everything, and everybody just kept throwing money at it because, this is the next great .com. Every company that claims to use AI and is just getting juiced because of it, a lot of them won't survive. It won't do well for them. That is my opinion. The Wall Street Journal alludes to it, but they don't actually say it. They say, oh, no, well, it's still got a little bit of time to go. That's fair. You don't ever want to breed any sort of fear into the market. I'll tell you now, I'm a little bit more cynical, and also I have always thought the AI boom was absolutely hilarious. We talked about it in class, like it's artificial. People just put AI in everything, and it's even a joke in a lot of investor circles anyway. You see it on like Jim Cramer, who's made jokes like this. You've seen it with lots of different financial advisors or friends of mine who went on to be financial advisors. Like, yeah, you just throw AI in there, like, oh, this is the best investing technology. We use AI to break down blah, blah, blah. And they will instantly do better with people. So we may be heading into an AI boom, or we're creating a artificial general intelligence, and it is just going to completely juice everything, and we never have to worry about stock price values again. It'll just take care of us. It will just keep making the companies more productive. We just give all of our money to it, and it just builds up a nice little trust fund for us. And when we're 80, we say, General Intelligence, please, can I have my money? The government, Social Security's gone now. Can I have my private retirement fund? And then the General Intelligence will say, of course, little baby. Just make sure you vote in my candidate when we go into the next election. Of course, General Intelligence. Sorry. Got a little bit cynical there, but the point still stands. We are probably running into a bubble here, and the productivity growth is good for keeping the prices up now. I don't see it lasting forever, but then again, that is a very general statement that, I don't see it lasting forever. And then when it falls, I can say I'm right. At the end of the day, I think we are running into an AI.com style boom, just like the last bubble, just like the one that happened in 2000. I'm not saying that's going to happen within the next year, but what I am saying is eventually the realities of AI, unless it keeps improving, are going to come in abruptly. And at the end of the day, it's not going to end well for everybody who's just oversaturated in the AI market. But this is not this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. I am just a random person talking on the internet. Okay, so let's jump to our last article that comes from Woo Globe. Momentary panic flirts with adorable puppy as she falls into a pond. And I'll tell you now, at first you kind of worry, but no, she gets her feet underneath her, quite literally, and she starts swimming like a courageous little dog. Honestly, it is a cute video. If you want to check it out, or you want to read any of today's articles, there's a link in the description below, that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google Podcasts, as well as Podvine, and the Twitter handle @YourDailyFlip, where I post a Twitter tirade every Tuesday and Thursday. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.